As I hung my clothes in the antique armoire, I felt a sudden, sharp awareness of what we were doing. We were two women in their late 60s, thousands of miles from home, embarking on an adventure that many people half our age would find daunting. And yet, I felt more alive, more capable, more myself than I had in years. I took out James's compass and placed it on my nightstand, then unwrapped the photo of us from our honeymoon and set it beside the compass. "We made it," I whispered to his smiling image. "First stop, just like you planned." Our guide for the Vatican museums, Francesca, met us in the hotel lobby. A vivacious woman in her 50s with an art history degree and an encyclopedic knowledge of Rome, she immediately put us at ease. "You are very wise to book a private tour," she told us as we settled into her car. "The regular lines can mean hours of waiting, and then you are rushed through like cattle. This way, we go at your pace, and I can show you the true treasures, not just the famous ones everyone photographs, but never really sees." The next 4 hours were a blur of beauty and history. Francesca guided us through the labyrinthine Vatican, museums with expertise and enthusiasm, knowing exactly when to pause so we could rest, when to elaborate on a particular artwork, and when to simply let us absorb the magnificence in silence. In the Sistine Chapel, she found us seats along the wall where we could sit and gaze up at Michelangelo's masterpiece without straining our necks or being jostled by crowds. "Take your time," she said softly. "This is not something to rush." I tried to memorize every detail, knowing that no photograph could capture the emotional impact of seeing such beauty in person. I thought of how James would have reacted. He had always been moved by art in a way that surprised people who didn't know him well. This practical engineer with tears in his eyes before a Caravaggio. By the time we emerged from St. Peter's Basilica, into the late afternoon sunshine, I was physically tired but mentally exhilarated. "Grazie mille, Francesca," I said, hugging our guide goodbye. "You've given us a perfect first day in Rome." "It was my pleasure," she replied warmly. "Rest well tonight. Tomorrow we conquer ancient Rome." Back at the hotel, Eleanor and I were too stimulated to nap despite our jet lag. Instead, we ordered aperitifs on our terrace and watched the sky turn golden as the sun began to set over the eternal city. "I keep thinking about what Jennifer said," Eleanor mused, swirling her Aperol spritz. "About us not being able to handle the pace, the walking, the heat. I walked over 12,000 steps today according to my fitness tracker, and I feel fantastic." "It's amazing what you can do when no one's there to tell you that you can't," I replied, raising my glass in a toast. "To proving them wrong." "To living our dreams," Eleanor countered, clinking her glass against mine. That night, after a sumptuous dinner at the hotel's rooftop restaurant, I fell into a deep, contented sleep. My last thought before drifting off was that Jennifer and her family would be boarding their flight to Rome tomorrow, completely unaware that her supposedly frail mother was already here, living her best life. The next few days were a whirlwind of experiences. Francesca guided us through the Colosseum and Roman Forum, regaling us with vivid stories that brought the ancient ruins to life. We tossed coins into the Trevi fountain, promising to return to Rome someday. We climbed the Spanish Steps and rewarded ourselves with gelato that put any ice cream I'd ever tasted to shame. We wandered through countless piazzas, each more charming than the last, and ducked into churches filled with art that would be the centerpiece of any museum back home. In the evenings, we dined at restaurants Michael had recommended, savoring pasta made that morning, wine from nearby hills, and desserts that made us groan with pleasure. I tried everything, abandoning my usual caution about calories and unfamiliar foods. I wanted to taste it all, to absorb Italy through every sense. On our fourth day in Rome, as we enjoyed a leisurely lunch at a trattoria in the Trastevere neighborhood, I remembered that Jennifer and her family would have arrived the previous day. "They're probably at the Vatican today," I mused, picturing them standing in the long public line that snaked around the walls of the tiny country. Sophia will be bored and complaining about the wait, and Ethan will be asking how much longer until they can get gelato. Eleanor smiled over her glass of Chianti. Meanwhile, here we are, like a pair of Roman empresses. I laughed, but there was a twinge of something like guilt beneath my satisfaction. I wasn't doing this to spite Jennifer. Not really. But I couldn't deny the vindication I felt at having proved her assumptions wrong. That evening, right on schedule, Jennifer called. I had been diligent about keeping my phone charged and our international plans activated, not wanting to give her any reason to worry unnecessarily. "Mom, how are you? How's the trip so far?" Her voice sounded tinny and distant, but the genuine concern was evident. "It's wonderful," I replied truthfully. "Rome is everything I'd hoped it would be." "How about you? Did you all recover from the flight okay?" "The kids are still a bit jet-lagged, and the lines here are insane. We waited almost 3 hours to get into the Vatican today, and then it was so crowded we could barely see anything. But we're having fun." I made sympathetic noises, not mentioning our private tour or the fact that we'd barely waited 5 minutes to enter any attraction. "Where are you staying?" she asked. "Is it clean? Comfortable?" I hesitated, then decided a partial truth was best for now. "Very comfortable. We have a lovely view of the city." "That's good. We're at the Hotel Moderno near the train station. It's basic, but it works for a family of 4, and we're hardly in the room anyway." We chatted for a few more minutes about what we'd seen so far and their plans for the next day before saying goodbye. I promised to call again in a couple of days, just as we'd be leaving for Paris, which would coincide with their arrival there. "She still has no idea, does she?" Eleanor asked after I hung up. "None whatsoever," I confirmed. "She's so used to thinking of me as living a small, cautious life that it doesn't occur to her I might be doing anything different." Eleanor shook her head. "She's in for quite a surprise when your paths finally cross." I nodded, but as I prepared for bed that night, I found myself wondering if I was being fair to Jennifer. Yes, she had hurt me deeply with her dismissal, but she wasn't malicious, just blind to who I really was, perhaps because I had allowed myself to become invisible in the years since James died. I had stopped asserting my desires, stopped challenging others' perceptions of me, stopped living up to my own potential. This trip wasn't just about proving Jennifer wrong. It was about reclaiming the vibrant, adventurous woman I had always been beneath the roles of mother, teacher, widow. The woman James had fallen in love with, who had somehow gotten lost along the way. Our final days in Rome were bittersweet. I had fallen in love with the city, its chaotic energy, its layer upon layer of history, the way life was lived so visibly, in its piazzas and sidewalk cafes. But Paris beckoned, and our carefully orchestrated plan required us to move on just as Jennifer's family was arriving. On our last morning, we visited the Borghese Gallery, marveling at Bernini's sculptures. That seemed to capture marble in motion. Afterward, we strolled through the surrounding gardens, enjoying a perfect spring day before heading back to the hotel to prepare for our departure. The same Mercedes that had brought us from the airport now returned us there, the driver helping, with our luggage and wishing us buon viaggio as we entered the terminal. Once again, the first-class treatment smoothed every potential stress point of air travel. Within an hour, we were settled in our comfortable seats on the short flight to Paris, sipping champagne as Italy fell away beneath us. "I can't believe how easy this has been," Eleanor remarked. "No wonder rich people always look so relaxed." I laughed. "It's not just the money, though that certainly helps. It's the confidence. We expected things to go well, so they did." "Is that your secret, Martha? Positive thinking?" I considered this. "Not exactly. It's more like..." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Refusing to accept other people's limitations. Jennifer decided I was too old and frail for this trip, and if I had accepted her judgment, I would be sitting alone in my condo right now instead of flying to Paris. Eleanor nodded thoughtfully. You know, that's what I've always admired about you, even back when we were teaching together. You never let anyone tell you what you couldn't do. I was startled by this assessment. Really? That's how you see me? Absolutely. Remember when the principal wanted to give the AP English classes to that young hotshot from Boston, and you marched into his office with your students' test scores and refused to budge until he reconsidered? The memory made me smile. I had forgotten that version of myself. The fierce advocate, the woman who stood her ground. Somewhere along the way, probably around the time James got sick, I had started to fade, to defer, to accept limits rather than challenge them. I remember, I said softly. I'm trying to find my way back to her. Eleanor squeezed my hand. You're doing a pretty good job so far. Paris greeted us with drizzling rain, but even the gloomy weather couldn't diminish the city's allure. Our Hotel Le Grand Palais was a Belle Époque masterpiece near the Champs-Élysées. As in Rome, we were treated like visiting dignitaries, escorted to a suite that took my breath away with its classic French elegance and its balcony offering a view of the Eiffel Tower in the distance. I feel like I'm in a movie, Eleanor whispered, as the bellhop departed after showing us the features of our suite. A really, really good movie. I ran my hand over the silk damask of the sofa, still hardly believing this was real. James would have gotten such a kick out of this. He always said that someday we'd stay in places like this, but I'm not sure either of us really believed it. He's here with you, Eleanor said gently. In everything you're experiencing. Nodded, unpacking James's compass and photo to place on my nightstand, just as I had in Rome. Our own small ritual. Despite the rain, we ventured out that first evening, determined to see the City of Light illuminated. Our concierge arranged for a private car tour, and we gasped like schoolgirls as we drove past landmarks I'd seen in countless films and photographs. The Arc de Triomphe, Notre Dame, still under reconstruction after the devastating fire. The Louvre's glass pyramid glowing like a diamond in the night. When we reached the Eiffel Tower, our driver stopped so we could watch as it erupted in a dazzling display of twinkling lights on the hour. It's even more magical than I imagined, I breathed, watching the iconic structure shimmer against the night sky. Worth waiting for? Eleanor asked, knowing how long I'd dreamed of this moment. Worth every minute, I confirmed. The next morning dawned clear and bright, perfect weather for our private tour of the Louvre. Like Francesca in Rome, our Parisian guide Mathieu was a font of knowledge, guiding us past the worst of the crowds to show us not just the famous works like the Mona Lisa and Venus de Milo, but lesser-known treasures that spoke to his passion for art history. Most tourists, they run from one famous painting to another, checking them off a list without really seeing anything, he explained, as he led us through the less crowded galleries of French Romanticism. But the soul of the Louvre is in these quieter spaces. I thought of Jennifer and her family, who were set to arrive in Paris that very day. They would undoubtedly visit the Louvre during their stay, probably with a group tour that rushed them through the highlights. Would they have time to absorb the beauty, to let it really sink in? Or would they be too busy keeping the children entertained, checking attractions off their list, moving at the frenetic pace that Jennifer seemed to think was the only way to travel? After the Louvre, we enjoyed a leisurely lunch at a charming bistro Mathieu had recommended, where the waiter treated us with the same deference he showed to the stylish Parisians at neighboring tables. My high school French was rusty but serviceable, and his patient corrections helped me improve with each interaction. That afternoon, we visited Montmartre, climbing the steps to Sacré-Cœur Basilica and wandering the winding streets that had once been home to artists like Picasso and Dali. In the Place du Tertre, local artists still set up their easels to paint portraits of tourists. We should do it, Eleanor said impulsively, pointing to one of the artists whose portraits seemed particularly skillful. A souvenir of our adventure. The artist, an older man with silver hair and kind eyes, took his time with our portraits, chatting amiably in English sprinkled with French phrases. "You ladies, you have seen much life, yes? There is wisdom in your eyes." I smiled at his diplomatic way of acknowledging our age without making it a limitation. "We're still seeing, still learning," I replied. He nodded approvingly. "C'est ça. That is the secret to staying young." When he finished, he presented us each with a charcoal sketch that captured not just our features, but something of our spirits. A spark in the eyes, a hint of mischief in the smile. I paid him generously, tucking the portrait carefully into my bag to be framed when I returned home. That evening, we had reservations at a small but renowned restaurant near our hotel. The maitre d' greeted us warmly, escorting us to a prime table by the window. As I settled into my chair, I glanced around at the other diners, couples murmuring intimately over candlelight, business associates in serious discussion, a family celebrating what appeared to be an anniversary. And then I froze. At a table, near the back of the restaurant sat Jennifer, Rob, Sophia, and Ethan. They hadn't seen us yet. They were focused on their menus, Sophia looking bored as usual, Ethan fidgeting with his napkin, Rob and Jennifer engaged in what appeared to be a tense conversation. "Eleanor," I whispered urgently, "they're here." She followed my gaze, her eyes widening. "What do you want to do? Leave?" I considered it for a moment. This wasn't how I had planned our reunion. In my imagination, I would be polished and prepared, not caught off guard in the middle of dinner. But perhaps this was better, natural, unscripted. No, I decided. I'm not going to hide or run away. That's not why we came all this way. Eleanor nodded, a slow smile spreading across her face. Showtime. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and stood up. As I walked toward their table, I could feel curious glances from other diners, perhaps wondering about this confident older woman crossing the restaurant with such purpose. I was halfway to their table when Jennifer looked up. Her expression shifted from distraction to shock, her mouth actually dropping open as she registered my presence. "Mom?" she gasped, loud enough that Rob looked up in confusion, following her gaze to where I stood. "Hello, dear," I said calmly. "What a lovely coincidence." "Mom?" Jennifer repeated, as if she couldn't quite believe her eyes. The rest of her family turned to look at me, their expressions ranging from confusion to disbelief. "What are you doing in Paris?" I smiled, maintaining the calm confidence I'd cultivated over the past week. "The same thing you are, I imagine. Enjoying the city." Rob recovered first, standing awkwardly to offer me his seat. "Mrs. Williams, this is quite a surprise." "Please sit," I said, gesturing for him to remain in his chair. "I don't want to interrupt your dinner. I just saw you from our table and thought I'd say hello." "Your table?" Jennifer craned her neck, spotting Eleanor, who gave a cheerful wave from across the restaurant. "You and Eleanor are having dinner here, but this is..." She trailed off, clearly calculating the likely cost of a meal at one of Paris's more exclusive establishments. Sophia, my teenage granddaughter, finally looked up from her phone with interest. "Grandma? How are you even here right now?" "We flew," I replied with a touch of dry humor. "First class, actually. Very comfortable." Jennifer's mouth opened and closed without sound. I could almost see the wheels turning in her head, trying to reconcile the mother she thought she knew, the one too old and frail for European travel, with the well-dressed woman standing confidently before her in an upscale Parisian restaurant. "But you," she began, then stopped, seemingly aware of how her next words might sound. "Too old? Too set in my ways? Too much of a burden to keep up with your family vacation?" I supplied, keeping my tone light despite the lingering hurt beneath my words. "That's what you were thinking, wasn't it?" Rob shifted uncomfortably in his seat while Ethan, my younger grandchild, looked between his mother and me with wide eyes. "Mom, I never said..." Jennifer started. "You did, though," I interrupted gently. Not in those exact words, perhaps, but the message was clear. And it hurt, Jennifer, more than I think you realized. A flush crept up my daughter's neck. I was worried about you, she said defensively. International travel is challenging. The long flights, the walking, unfamiliar places, all of which I've been managing quite well, I said. Eleanor and I have been having a wonderful time. We spent 4 days in Rome before coming to Paris yesterday. You went to Rome too? Sophia asked, suddenly more interested in her grandmother than her phone. We were just there. Where did you stay? The Grand Plaza Roma, I replied, near the Pantheon. Rob whistled softly. That's a 5-star hotel. We walked past it. Couldn't afford to even look at the lobby. Jennifer was staring at me as if I'd suddenly started speaking in tongues. Mom, how are you affording all this? First-class flights? Luxury hotels? This restaurant? I met her gaze steadily. Your father and I saved for 40 years to make this trip. We lived frugally, setting aside money specifically for the European adventure we planned to take in our retirement. After he died, I paused, swallowing against the familiar tightness in my throat. After he died, that money just sat in an account. I was saving it for someday, but then I realized that someday is now. I'm not getting any younger, as you so helpfully pointed out. A flash of guilt crossed Jennifer's face. I didn't mean to hurt you. I know, I said softly. But you did. You made assumptions about my capabilities based solely on my age. You decided what I could and couldn't handle without asking me. You treated me like I was somehow less. The maitre d' approached our table, looking concerned about the impromptu family reunion disrupting his carefully orchestrated dining room. Madame, is everything all right? Yes, thank you, I assured him. These are my family members. We unexpectedly found ourselves in the same restaurant. He brightened. Ah, quelle coïncidence merveilleuse. Perhaps you would prefer to dine together. We could arrange a larger table. Jennifer looked panicked at the suggestion, no doubt thinking of the expense, but I stepped in smoothly. That's very kind, but they're already in the middle of their meal? And my friend is waiting. Another time, perhaps. The maitre d' nodded and retreated. I turned back to Jennifer's family, noticing how tired they looked. Ethan was fighting yawns, and even Sophia's interest had waned as she returned to scrolling on her phone. I should get back to Eleanor, I said. But perhaps we could meet tomorrow. I'd love to hear about your travels so far. Jennifer nodded, still seeming stunned by my unexpected appearance. Sure. Yes, that would be nice. Wonderful. Why, don't you come to our hotel for breakfast? Le Grand Palais on Avenue George V. Say 9 o'clock? The dining room has a lovely view of the city. Rob's eyebrows shot up at the mention of one of Paris's most prestigious addresses, but he recovered quickly. We'll be there, Mrs. Williams. It would be our pleasure. I gave them a warm smile, suddenly feeling a wave of affection for my family despite everything. They were who they were, Jennifer with her anxious control, Rob with his perpetual distraction, the children with their teenage self-absorption. But they were mine, and I loved them, even when they underestimated me. Until tomorrow, then, I said, turning to go. Mom, Jennifer called after me, her voice small in a way I hadn't heard since she was a child. You look different, happy. I paused, looking back at her. I am happy, dear. I'm living a dream that's been 40 years in the making. It feels good to finally keep that promise to your father and to myself. As I walked back to our table, I felt lighter somehow, as if a weight I hadn't fully acknowledged had been lifted. Eleanor was watching me with poorly concealed curiosity. Well? She demanded as soon as I sat down. How did it go? Jennifer looked like she'd seen a ghost. The ghost of her mother's former self, perhaps, I said with a small laugh. She's in shock. They all are. I've invited them to breakfast at our hotel tomorrow. Eleanor grinned. Oh, to be a fly on that wall. Are you going to tell them everything? The private tours, the first-class lounges, all of it? I considered this as our appetizers arrived. Delicate pastry shells filled with foie gras and fig preserves. I think they've gotten the general idea. But yes, I won't hide anything. This isn't about making them feel bad, though. It's about making them see me, the real me, not the diminished version they've been carrying in their heads. Well, mission accomplished on that front, Eleanor said, raising her wine glass in a toast. To visibility. To visibility? I echoed. Our glasses clinking softly in the candlelight. The rest of our dinner was exquisite. Course after course of French cuisine at its finest. Each plate a work of art in itself. I savored every bite, occasionally glancing toward Jennifer's table. They left before we did, Jennifer giving me an awkward wave on their way out. I nodded in acknowledgement, noting how she seemed to be moving with the tentative care of someone in unfamiliar territory. That night, back in our luxurious suite, I found myself wondering what tomorrow's breakfast would bring. I wasn't naive enough to think that one unexpected encounter could completely change Jennifer's perception of me, but it was a start, a crack in the image she'd constructed. I placed a call to the hotel's concierge, asking him to reserve a table for 6 in the dining room for breakfast and to ensure that our bill covered everyone's meal. And perhaps some special attention for my grandchildren, I added. They're 14 and 12. Of course, Madam Williams, he assured me. We will take excellent care of your family. After hanging up, I joined Eleanor on our balcony, where she was enjoying a nightcap while gazing at the illuminated Eiffel Tower in the distance. Having second thoughts? She asked, noting my pensive expression. Not about the trip, I clarified. Just wondering if I'm handling this situation, with Jennifer in the right way. I don't want to embarrass her or make her feel small. I just want her to see me clearly. Eleanor considered this. You know, Martha, sometimes people need to be shaken out of their preconceptions. Jennifer has been seeing you a certain way for so long that she's blind to who you really are. Maybe this shock is exactly what your relationship needs. I nodded slowly. You may be right. I've been complicit in her perception in a way. After James died, I withdrew. I became less of myself, less engaged with life. Why wouldn't she think I was incapable of adventure when I barely left my condo for months? Grief changes us, Eleanor said gently, but it doesn't have to define us forever. I squeezed her hand, grateful once again for her friendship. No, it doesn't, and tomorrow is another chance to redefine myself, not just for Jennifer, but for me. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the city lights shimmer below us. Paris was as magical as I had always imagined, but experiencing it with this newfound sense of agency made it even more special. I was no longer just a widow, no longer just someone's mother or grandmother. I was Martha Williams, traveler, adventurer, woman of the world. The next morning, I woke early, feeling a mixture of anticipation and nervousness about the upcoming breakfast. I chose my outfit carefully, a tailored linen dress in a soft blue that James had always said brought out my eyes, paired with the delicate gold necklace he had given me on our 30th anniversary. I wanted to look my best, not to intimidate Jennifer, but to reinforce that I was still vital, still engaged with life. Eleanor and I were already seated in the hotel's elegant dining room when Jennifer's family arrived. The maitre d' escorted them to our table, and I couldn't help but notice their wide-eyed reactions to the sumptuous surroundings, the crystal chandeliers, the fresh-cut flowers at every table, the panoramic views of Paris through floor-to-ceiling windows. Good morning, I greeted them warmly, standing to embrace each one. I'm so glad you could join us. Jennifer looked better rested than she had the previous evening, but there was still a wariness to her expression, as if she was bracing herself for something unpleasant. Rob, ever the diplomat, complimented the hotel enthusiastically, while Sophia and Ethan slid into their seats, both unusually quiet in these unfamiliar surroundings. "This place is incredible, Grandma," Ethan finally said, looking around in awe. "Do you really stay here?" "We do," I confirmed with a smile. "Our suite has a balcony with a view of the Eiffel Tower." "No way." His eyes widened. "Can I see it?" "Of course, after breakfast if your parents don't mind." Jennifer nodded distractedly, still taking in the opulent dining room. "This must be expensive," she said in a low voice. "It is," I acknowledged, seeing no reason to pretend otherwise. "But as I mentioned last night, your father and I saved for this trip for decades. I'm simply fulfilling our plan." A waiter appeared with coffee and hot chocolate for the children, followed by a parade of pastries, fresh fruit, and traditional French breakfast dishes. As we began to eat, the initial awkwardness gradually eased, especially when Sophia and Ethan began peppering me with questions about our trip so far. "Did you see the Colosseum?" Ethan wanted to know. "We had to wait in line for like 2 hours, and then it was super crowded inside." "We did," I said. "We had a private guide named Francesca who took us through a special entrance. No waiting." "A private guide?" Jennifer echoed. "Mom, those cost a fortune." I met her gaze steadily. "They're worth every penny. We've learned so much more than we would have from those audio guides or group tours." "We had a guide in Rome, too," Rob interjected, clearly trying to smooth things over. "For the Vatican." "Yes, in a group of 20 people," Jennifer added. "We could barely hear him over the crowd." I nodded sympathetically. "That's why private tours are so wonderful." Francesca took us through the Vatican museums before they opened to the public. We had the Sistine Chapel almost to ourselves for 15 minutes. Jennifer's expression was difficult to read, part envy, part disbelief, and something else I couldn't quite identify. Resentment, perhaps? Or simply confusion at this new version of her mother who spoke casually of private tours and luxury. "Hotels? How are you getting around the city?" Eleanor asked, deftly changing the subject. "The metro can be confusing, but it's very efficient." "We've been walking mostly," Rob replied. "Our hotel is near Gare du Nord, so it's central, though not as upscale as this area." "We arranged for a driver during our stay," I said. "It's so much easier than trying to navigate public transportation in an unfamiliar city, especially after a long day of sightseeing." Jennifer set down her coffee cup with a bit more force than necessary. "Mom, is this some kind of, revenge? For not inviting you to join our trip? Because if it is—" "Jennifer," I interrupted, gently but firmly, "this isn't about you." She blinked, clearly taken aback. "What do you mean?" "I mean that this trip, my choices, my experiences, aren't about making you feel bad or getting back at you. They're about me living my life on my terms, fulfilling a dream I've held for most of my adult life." She frowned. "But the timing, the destinations. You're mirroring our trip. You have to admit that seems intentional." "I won't deny that your dismissal was the catalyst," I acknowledged. "When you told me I was too old to keep up with your family, it hurt. But it also woke me up. I realized I'd been putting my life on hold, waiting for, I don't know what, permission maybe? But the truth is, I don't need anyone's permission to live fully." The table fell silent. Even Sophia and Ethan seemed to sense the weight of the moment, looking between their mother and me with unusual attentiveness. "I never meant to dismiss you," Jennifer finally said, her voice smaller. "I was worried. International travel isn't easy." "No, it isn't," I agreed. "But difficult? Things can still be worthwhile, and I'm more capable than you give me credit for." Rob cleared his throat. "I think what we're all seeing, Mrs. Williams, is that we underestimated you. Clearly, you're thriving on this adventure." I am, I said with a smile. I feel more alive than I have in years. Mom, Jennifer began, then paused as if searching for the right words. I'm sorry. I should have listened to you, not made assumptions. Her apology, though simple, felt significant. It was perhaps the first time in years that she had acknowledged her mother as an equal, someone deserving of basic respect rather than protective condescension. Thank you, I said simply. That means a lot. Ethan, apparently deciding the serious part of the conversation was over, returned to his original question. So can we see your fancy room now, Grandma? I laughed, grateful for his uncomplicated enthusiasm. Yes, of course. And after that, what would you all say to joining Eleanor and me for a private boat tour on the Seine this afternoon? Our guide can easily accommodate a few more passengers. Jennifer opened her mouth as if to protest, but Rob placed a hand over hers. We'd be honored, he said. If you're sure we wouldn't be intruding. Not at all, Eleanor assured them. It would be our pleasure to share the experience. As we finished breakfast and prepared to show them our suite, I caught Jennifer watching me with a thoughtful expression. When our eyes met, she didn't look away. You really are different, she said quietly, falling into step beside me as we walked toward the elevators. It's not just how you look or where you're staying. It's something in your manner, your confidence. I'm not different, I corrected her. I'm just more myself than I've been in a long time. The suite drew appropriate gasps of admiration from everyone, especially when we showed them the balcony with its picture-perfect view of the Parisian skyline. Sophia even asked if she could take photos for her social media, suddenly finding her grandmother's travels Instagram-worthy. This is seriously the coolest thing ever, Grandma, she declared, positioning herself against the railing with the Eiffel Tower in the background. None of my friends' grandparents do stuff like this. I smiled, enjoying her uncharacteristic enthusiasm. Well, maybe they should. Age is just a number, after all. As the children explored the suite with Eleanor, Jennifer noticed James's compass and photograph on my nightstand. She picked up the compass, running her fingers over its aged brass surface. Dad's compass, she said softly. You brought it with you. I did, I confirmed. It helps me feel connected to him, like he's experiencing all this alongside me in some way. Jennifer's eyes filled with unexpected tears. He would be so proud of you, Mom. This trip, the way you're living your dream, it's exactly what he would have wanted. I felt my own eyes growing moist. I think so too. He always said we'd see the world together someday. I'm just keeping that promise, even if he's only here in spirit. She set the compass down carefully and turned to face me directly. I've been treating you like you're fragile, haven't I? Like you need to be protected, managed. Yes, I said honestly. And I've been allowing it. After your father died, it was easier to retreat, to become smaller. I didn't have the energy to assert myself. But this trip has reminded me of who I really am. Jennifer nodded slowly. Jennifer glanced at me, understanding flickering in her eyes. Yes, she said quietly. Sometimes we don't see what's right in front of us. The panoramic view of Paris spread out before us was breathtaking. The Seine winding its way through the city, historic monuments and modern buildings creating a harmonious tapestry, gardens and boulevards adding structure to the urban landscape. I thought of James, how he would have loved this moment, and felt his presence so strongly it was almost tangible. Grandpa would have loved this, Sophia said, echoing my thoughts with uncanny precision. He was always showing us pictures from his travel books. Yes, I agreed, my throat tight with emotion. He would have. We lingered at the top, taking photos and pointing out landmarks we recognized. Eleanor, always thoughtful, offered to take family photos of Jennifer, Rob, and the children. and then insisted they take several of me as well. "You need to document this journey," she said. "For James." As the afternoon waned, we descended and found our driver waiting patiently. The children were clearly tired after a full day of sightseeing, and Jennifer suggested we all return to our respective hotels to rest before dinner. "Would you like to join us this evening?" she asked. "There's a restaurant near our hotel that," the concierge recommended. I hesitated, not wanting to intrude too much on their family time. "That's kind, but perhaps Eleanor and I should stick to our original plans. We have reservations at a place near the Champs-Élysées." "Of course," Jennifer said, though I detected a hint of disappointment in her tone. "Another time, then." "Why don't you all come to our hotel tomorrow evening?" Eleanor suggested. "We could have dinner at the rooftop restaurant. The view is spectacular, especially at sunset." Rob's face lit up at the suggestion. "That sounds wonderful. If you're sure it's not an imposition." "Not at all," I assured him. "It would be our pleasure." As our driver pulled up to their more modest hotel, I felt a sudden reluctance to say goodbye. This day had been unexpected in the best possible way. A healing of sorts, a bridge being rebuilt between my daughter and me. "Thank you for today," Jennifer said as they prepared to exit the car. "It meant a lot to all of us." "To me as well," I replied sincerely. Sophia surprised me with a warm hug. "You're the coolest grandma ever," she declared. "Can't wait for dinner tomorrow." After they had gone inside, our driver pulled away, heading back toward Le Grand Palais. Eleanor was uncharacteristically quiet, gazing out at the Parisian streets with a thoughtful expression. "Penny, for your thoughts," I prompted after a few minutes of silence. She turned to me with a smile. "I was just thinking about how differently this trip is turning out from what we expected. You came to prove something to Jennifer, and you have. But it's becoming so much more than that." "It is," I agreed. "I didn't anticipate how this journey would transform not just how she sees me, but how I see myself." Back at our hotel, we decided to relax in the spa before dinner, indulging in massages that worked out the knots from days of walking Paris's streets. As I lay on the treatment table, eyes closed while skilled hands eased the tension from my shoulders, I reflected on the day's events. Something fundamental had shifted in my relationship with Jennifer. For years, we had been locked in roles that no longer fit. She, the protective daughter, I, the diminished mother. But today, those constraints had begun to loosen. She had glimpsed the woman beyond the mother, the vital human being with desires and capabilities independent of my family role. After our spa treatments, we returned to our suite to prepare for dinner. I called the concierge to confirm our reservation for tomorrow evening, ensuring they would set aside a table with the best view for 6 people. Then I phoned Michael at Global Journeys to discuss our Barcelona plans and the possibility of extending our trip. "Of course, Mrs. Williams," he said enthusiastically. "I can arrange for you to join your family's hotel in Barcelona if you wish, or maintain your original reservation at the Hotel Marina Bay. As for extending beyond Barcelona, what did you have in mind?" "I'm not sure yet," I admitted. "Perhaps Madrid, since that's where they're heading, or maybe somewhere different. Eleanor and I are discussing options. Take your time deciding," he advised. "I'll keep your return flight flexible. Europe has so much to offer beyond the major capitals, the coastal towns of Spain, the wine regions of France, the alpine villages. There's no need to rush home if you're enjoying yourselves." His words resonated with me. Why rush home? My condo would still be there, my quiet routine waiting to reclaim me. But this feeling of aliveness, of discovery, that was precious and worth extending. "Thank you, Michael," I said. "I'll let you know our decision soon." That evening, Eleanor and I dined at a small, elegant restaurant known for its innovative takes on classic French cuisine. The chef, learning we were Americans on our first visit to Paris, sent out several complimentary dishes for us to try, each more delicious than the last. I could get used to this, Eleanor sighed happily as she savored a spoonful of truffle-infused soup. Luxury travel suits us, Martha. It does, I agreed. But I've been thinking about tomorrow and beyond. Jennifer's invitation to join them for the rest of their trip. I'm tempted to accept. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. Really? After all the effort we put into planning our own independent journey? The original purpose was to show Jennifer that I could travel without her assistance, I explained. I think that point has been made quite effectively. Now, I find myself wanting to spend time with them, especially the grandchildren. They're at such interesting ages, and I've missed so much of their growing up with them in Seattle and me in Portland. She nodded thoughtfully. I can understand that. Family is important. But what about our luxury accommodations? Our first-class travel? Would you be willing to step down to their level of lodging? That's what I've been considering, I said. Perhaps there's a middle ground. We could maintain our own accommodations but coordinate our activities with them. Or I could treat them to an upgrade for part of the journey, a taste of the lifestyle we've been enjoying. Eleanor smiled. The generous grandmother swooping in to elevate their travel experience? I like it. And what about me in this scenario? You're welcome to join us for as much or as little as you'd like, I assured her. You've been such a wonderful companion on this adventure, and I wouldn't want to exclude you from any part of it. But I also understand if you'd prefer to maintain our original plans, or even explore on your own for a while. Let me think about it, she said. I adore your family, but I also value our independence. Perhaps a blend of together and apart time would work best. We spent the rest of dinner discussing possibilities, weighing options for the remainder of our European journey. By the time we returned to our hotel, we had a rough plan. We would invite Jennifer's family to join us at our Barcelona hotel for at least part of their stay, offering to cover the cost difference as a gift. We would suggest some shared activities but also maintain space for separate explorations. And we would consider extending our trip to include Madrid, perhaps even venturing to the Spanish coastal town of San Sebastian, known for its beaches, and world-class dining. The next morning, I woke feeling lighter than I had in years. The weight of proving myself to Jennifer had lifted, replaced by the simple joy of experiencing Europe and reconnecting with my family on new terms. I called the concierge to arrange a special surprise for that evening's dinner, a cake celebrating our reunion and our shared adventure. Eleanor and I spent the day exploring Montmartre more thoroughly, visiting the small museums and shops we had missed on our first visit. We bought gifts for the grandchildren, an artist's sketchbook and quality-colored pencils for Sophia, who had mentioned an interest in drawing, and a vintage-style compass similar to James's for Ethan, who shared his grandfather's love of maps and navigation. As evening approached, we returned to our hotel to prepare for dinner. I chose a deep burgundy dress that James had always loved, paired with the pearl necklace he had given me on our 40th anniversary. Looking in the mirror, I hardly recognized the vibrant woman reflected there, cheeks flushed with excitement, eyes bright with anticipation, posture straight and confident. This was who I had always been beneath the layers of loss and diminished expectations. Jennifer's family arrived promptly at 7, all of them dressed for the occasion. Sophia had clearly made an effort with her appearance, trading her usual casual teen attire for a pretty sundress. Ethan looked uncomfortable but handsome in a button-down shirt and khakis. Rob was polished as always in a sport coat, and Jennifer, my heart swelled at the sight of her, wore a dress I hadn't seen before, her hair styled in soft waves that reminded me of her younger self. "You all look wonderful," I greeted them warmly. "The restaurant is on the top floor. I've arranged for a table with a view of the sunset." The maitre d' escorted us to a prime table next to the floor-to-ceiling windows, where the panorama of Paris spread out before us, bathed in the golden light of early evening. Sophia immediately began taking photos with her phone, while Ethan pressed his face against the glass, trying to identify landmarks. "This is incredible, Mom," Jennifer said softly as we settled into our seats. "Thank you for including us." "It's my pleasure," I replied sincerely. "There's nothing better than sharing beautiful experiences with the people you love." The meal that followed was one of the most enjoyable I could remember. The food was exquisite, of course, French cuisine at its finest, but it was the conversation, the laughter, the gradual dismantling of old tensions that made the evening special. We shared stories of our respective travels, compared notes on favorite sites, and discovered new common interests. Sophia, it turned out, shared my love of art history, while Ethan was fascinated by the architectural details I had noticed in various European buildings. As dessert was about to be served, I caught the eye of our waiter, who nodded discreetly. Moments later, he returned with a beautifully decorated cake. The words, "Williams Family European Adventure," written in chocolate script across the top. "What's this?" Jennifer asked, surprised. "A celebration," I explained, "of our shared journey across Europe and toward a new understanding of each other." Tears sprang to her eyes. "Oh, Mom," she whispered. As the waiter sliced and served the cake, I decided it was the perfect moment to share our proposal. "Eleanor and I have been discussing our plans for Barcelona and beyond," I began. "We've decided we'd like to invite all of you to join us at our hotel there, the Hotel Marina Bay. It's on the beachfront with beautiful views of the Mediterranean. We'd be delighted to have you as our guests for that portion of the trip." Rob looked stunned. "That's incredibly generous, Mrs. Williams, but we couldn't possibly—" "Please," I interrupted gently. "It would mean so much to me. James and I always intended to share this journey with family someday. This is my chance to fulfill that wish." Jennifer reached across the table to take my hand. "Are you sure, Mom? That's a significant expense." "I'm very sure," I assured her. "What?" "Good is saving for someday if you never allow someday to arrive. James would want us all to enjoy this experience together." "Can we really stay at a fancy hotel on the beach?" Ethan asked excitedly. "Our hotel in Barcelona is nowhere near the water." "Yes," I confirmed with a smile, "and there's a beautiful pool overlooking the sea." Sophia was already on her phone, looking up the hotel. "Oh my God," she breathed. "Grandma, this place is amazing. 5 stars." "Then it's settled," Eleanor declared. "The Williams family will conquer Barcelona together." "And after Barcelona?" Jennifer asked, looking between Eleanor and me. "Will you fly home from there as planned?" "We're considering extending our trip," I revealed. "Perhaps joining you in Madrid or exploring some other parts of Spain. Michael at Global Journeys has given us several intriguing options." Rob raised his glass in a toast to extended adventures and new beginnings. We clinked glasses, the crystal making a clear, bright sound that seemed to symbolize the clarity that had emerged from our initially clouded reunion. As we continued to eat and talk, plans taking shape for our shared time in Barcelona, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. This journey had already given me so much more than I had anticipated. Not just the fulfillment of a long-held dream, but the restoration of a relationship I had feared was irreparably damaged. After dinner, we showed Jennifer and her family our suite, the children once again marveling at the luxury and the spectacular view from our balcony. As the others explored, Jennifer hung back, gesturing for me to join her on the small settee in the sitting area. "I need to say something," she began, her voice low and serious. "When you first mentioned your trip to Europe, I was skeptical, even worried. But seeing you here, thriving in this environment, moving through these experiences with such confidence, I realize now how wrong I was." "We all make assumptions," I said gently. "About others, about ourselves. But mine were particularly unfair," she insisted. I've been treating you like an extension of myself, a responsibility, a concern, rather than as an individual with your own dreams and capabilities. I'm so sorry for that, Mom. Thank you, I said simply. That means a great deal to me. She glanced toward the balcony where the others were gathered, then back to me. You know, when Dad died, I was so worried about you. You seemed so lost, so diminished. I couldn't imagine you ever finding your way back to being, well, you. But here you are, more vibrantly yourself than I've seen in years. Grief changes us, I acknowledged. For a while, I did lose myself. But James wouldn't have wanted that for me. And somewhere deep down, I knew it. This trip has been about rediscovering the woman he fell in love with, the woman I've always been beneath the roles of wife, mother, widow. Jennifer nodded, her eyes bright with understanding and a hint of tears. I see her now, she said softly. And she's remarkable. We joined the others on the balcony, just as the Eiffel Tower began its hourly light show, thousands of twinkling lights making the iron structure shimmer against the night sky. Standing there, surrounded by my family with the city of light spread out before us, I felt James's presence more strongly than ever. Not as a ghost of the past, but as a living force in the love that connected us all. As Jennifer's family prepared to leave, I presented Sophia and Ethan with their gifts. Sophia's eyes widened with genuine delight as she leafed through the high-quality sketchbook, running her fingers over the textured paper. "This is professional grade," she said, impressed. "Thank you, Grandma. I can't wait to draw some of the architecture we've been seeing." Ethan was equally pleased with his compass, opening and closing it repeatedly, watching the needle swing toward north. "It's just like Grandpa's," he observed. "Does it really work?" "It does," I confirmed. "But more importantly, it reminds us to find our true direction in life, just as your grandfather always did." After they had gone, Eleanor and I settled on the balcony with a nightcap reflecting on the evening. "That went well," she observed. "Better than we could have hoped, really." "It did," I agreed. "I feel like we've turned a corner in our relationship. Jennifer sees me differently now, and I see her differently too. She's not just my overprotective daughter anymore. She's a woman trying to balance her own life, her own concerns." "And the plan for Barcelona?" "I think it's perfect," I said. "A chance to truly blend our journeys, to create shared memories while still maintaining our independence." Eleanor raised her glass in another toast. "To Barcelona, then, and new horizons beyond." As I sipped my cognac and gazed out at the glittering cityscape, I felt a profound sense of contentment. This journey, which had begun as an act of defiance, a need to prove myself, had evolved into something far more meaningful. A reclamation of my identity, yes, but also a reconnection with what mattered most. Family, friendship, the beauty of the world, and the joy of experiencing it all with open eyes and an open heart. Tomorrow we would continue our Parisian adventure, and soon we would move on to Barcelona's sunny shores. But for now, this moment was perfect, a pause between what had been and what was yet to come, filled with possibility and promise. Our last day in Paris dawned clear and bright, the perfect farewell to a city that had captured my heart. Eleanor and I had a leisurely breakfast on our balcony, savoring croissants still warm from the oven and rich coffee that put American versions to shame. "I could get used to this lifestyle," Eleanor mused, gazing out at the Eiffel Tower in the distance. "Returning to my little apartment in Portland is going to be quite the adjustment." I understood exactly what she meant. This journey had expanded my world in ways I hadn't anticipated. The thought of going back to my quiet routines, my familiar surroundings, felt somehow constraining now that I had rediscovered the joy of adventure. "Who says we have to go back right away?" I suggested, refilling our coffee cups. "Michael mentioned several options for extending our trip. the Spanish coast, the south of France, even a Mediterranean cruise. Eleanor's eyes lit up. Are you serious? I thought the Barcelona extension was just to spend time with Jennifer's family. It is partly, I acknowledged. But I've been thinking, why put limits on this experience? James and I saved for decades to make this trip happen. The money is there to be used to create memories and experiences worth having. Martha Williams, Eleanor said with a grin, I do believe Europe has awakened something in you. What happened to my practical, budget-conscious friend? I laughed, recognizing the truth in her observation. She discovered that someday isn't guaranteed, and that living fully in the present is the greatest gift we can give ourselves. We spent our final Parisian hours strolling through the Luxembourg gardens, watching children sail miniature boats on the pond and elderly Parisians playing pétanque beneath the shade of chestnut trees. There was a timelessness to the scene that moved me deeply. Generations sharing the same spaces, the same pleasures, the cycle of life continuing with elegant simplicity. That evening, Jennifer and her family joined us for our farewell dinner at a charming bistro Eleanor had discovered on one of our walks. It wasn't as luxurious as the hotel's restaurant, but it offered something more valuable: authenticity, a glimpse into real Parisian life rather than a curated tourist experience. I can't believe we're all leaving tomorrow, Sophia sighed as we settled into our table in the bistro's walled garden. Paris has been amazing. Barcelona will be amazing too, I promised. In different ways. The architecture, the beaches, the food. It's a feast for the senses. And we'll be together at the same hotel, Ethan added excitedly, with a pool overlooking the ocean. Jennifer and Rob exchanged glances, still somewhat overwhelmed by my invitation. Mom, we've been talking, Jennifer began. While we're incredibly grateful for your offer to host us in Barcelona, we want to contribute something toward the cost. It's too generous otherwise. I shook my head firmly. This is my gift to you, to all of us. A chance to experience this journey together, the way James and I always imagined. Rob started to protest again, but I held up a hand to stop him. Please, if our roles were reversed, if you had the means to share something special with me, wouldn't you want to do it without conditions or concerns about repayment? He nodded slowly, acknowledging the truth of my question. You're right, Mrs. Williams. Thank you for your generosity. We'll do our best to make it a memorable experience for everyone. You already are, I assured him. Our dinner was a delightful blend of exquisite food and lively conversation. The children, now completely comfortable with me in a way they hadn't been in years, peppered me with questions about my teaching career, my travels with their grandfather, and my life before I was just Grandma. I can't believe you marched in civil rights protests, Sophia said, wide-eyed after I shared stories of my college years. That's actually really cool. Your grandmother has always been cool, Jennifer said, surprising me with her sincere tone. I just forgot that for a while. As our waiter brought dessert, a selection of classic French pastries, Jennifer raised her glass in a toast. To Mom, who reminded us all that age is just a number and that it's never too late to reclaim your dreams. And to family, I added, who make the journey worthwhile. The next morning brought a flurry of activity as we prepared for our departure to Barcelona. Eleanor and I had arranged for a private car to take us to the airport, with a stop to collect Jennifer's family from their hotel. The contrast between our smooth, unhurried preparations and their last-minute scramble was striking. Another reminder of how luxury travel eliminated so many common stressors. I cannot believe we're doing this, Jennifer murmured as we settled into the first-class lounge at Charles de Gaulle Airport. I've never flown anything but economy in my life. Then you're in for a treat, I replied, guiding her toward the complimentary breakfast buffet. The flying experience is completely different when you're not crammed into a tiny seat with your knees against your chin. The The children were naturally delighted by the lounge amenities, unlimited snacks, comfortable seating, high-speed Wi-Fi. Even Rob seemed to relax into the experience, accepting a complimentary mimosa with a look of pleasant surprise. Our flight to Barcelona was brief but luxurious, with attentive service and comfortable seating that made the journey feel like an extension of our vacation rather than a necessary inconvenience. When we landed at Barcelona El Prat Airport, special treatment continued with a VIP greeting, expedited customs processing, and a private transfer to our beachfront hotel. The Hotel Marina Bay exceeded even my high expectations. Perched on Barcelona's coastline with unobstructed views of the Mediterranean, it was a modern paradise of sleek design and thoughtful luxury. Our rooms, adjacent suites on the top floor, offered panoramic vistas of both the city and the sea. "I think I've died and gone to heaven," Sophia declared as she explored our expansive terrace. "This is insane, Grandma." I smiled, enjoying her enthusiasm. "I thought you might approve." After we had all settled in, we gathered by the hotel's infinity pool overlooking the beach. The afternoon sun warmed the air, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of salt and distant flowers. Ethan and Sophia wasted no time changing into swimwear and diving into the crystal-clear water, while the adults claimed comfortable loungers in the shade. "I can't thank you enough for this," Jennifer said, surveying the idyllic scene. "Not just the hotel, but everything, showing me a different way to see you, to see travel, to see life itself." "You don't need to thank me," I assured her. "This journey has given me as much as it's given you, maybe more. It's restored something I thought I'd lost when your father died, a sense of possibility, of adventure, of living fully rather than just existing." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "I see that now. You're not just my mom or the children's grandmother. You're Martha Williams, a woman with her own dreams, her own strengths, her own path to forge." "Yes," I said simply. "That's exactly it." The days in Barcelona unfolded with a perfect balance of shared experiences and individual explorations. Together, we marveled at Gaudi's architectural masterpieces, the unfinished magnificence of the Sagrada Familia, the whimsical charm of Park Güell, the undulating facades of his apartment buildings. We strolled along Las Ramblas, sampling tapas and watching street performers. We visited museums and markets, absorbing the vibrant energy of Catalonia's capital. But we also carved out time for separate adventures. Jennifer and Rob took the children on an excursion to Montserrat, a monastery perched dramatically in the mountains outside the city. Eleanor explored the Gothic Quarter with a photography group she had connected with online, and I found my own rhythm in the city, sometimes joining a guided tour, sometimes wandering alone, savoring the freedom to follow my instincts and interests. One evening, toward the end of our Barcelona stay, I found myself sitting alone on our terrace as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. The Mediterranean stretched before me, a canvas of deepening blues touched with gold where the sunlight kissed the water. The beauty of the moment was almost painful in its intensity, a reminder of how precious and fleeting such experiences could be. "Mind if I join you?" Jennifer's voice came from behind me. I turned with a smile, patting the space beside me on the cushioned bench. I'd love the company. She settled next to me, and for a few minutes, we simply sat in companionable silence, watching the sun sink lower in the sky. The transformation of our relationship over these past weeks felt like a miracle, the barriers of misunderstanding and unexamined assumptions falling away to reveal the authentic connection that had always existed beneath. "I've been thinking," Jennifer said eventually, "about what happens when we go home. I don't want to lose this, the way we are together now." "We won't," I assured her. "This isn't just about the glamorous locations or the luxury hotels. It's about seeing each other clearly, respecting each other's capabilities and dreams. We can carry that home with us." She nodded, but I could see concern lingering in her eyes. It's easy here, away from real life. But once we're back in our routines, then we create new routines, I said simply. Maybe I'll visit Seattle more often, or you'll bring the family to Portland for weekends. Maybe we'll plan another trip together next year, something smaller, closer to home, but still an adventure we can share. I'd like that, she said, her expression softening. The kids would too. They've seen a whole new side of their grandmother on this trip. And I've seen new sides of all of you, I replied. That's the gift of travel, isn't it? It takes us out of our familiar contexts and lets us discover who we really are beneath the roles we play at home. As the sun touched the horizon, painting the sky in vivid shades of orange and pink, I felt James's presence more strongly than ever. Not as a ghost from the past, but as a living force in my heart, in the love that connected me to our daughter, to our grandchildren, to the future extending before us. Your father would be so proud of you, I said softly, of the mother you've become, the woman you are. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. And he would be bursting with pride for you, Mom, for having the courage to make this journey, to reclaim your dreams, to show us all what's possible when you refuse to be limited by others' expectations. We sat together as darkness fell and the first stars appeared above the Mediterranean. Below us, Barcelona began its evening transformation, lights twinkling on across the cityscape. There was a magic to the moment. Mother and daughter, past and future, wound together in the precious present. On our final evening in Barcelona, we gathered for a celebration dinner at the hotel's acclaimed rooftop restaurant. The setting was spectacular. Tables arranged around a central pool that reflected the city lights, the Mediterranean stretching into darkness beyond, the night sky a canopy of stars above us. I propose a toast, Rob said, raising his glass, as our appetizers arrived. To Martha, who showed us that it's never too late to pursue your dreams, and to Eleanor, who proved that friendship knows no boundaries of time or distance. And to family, Eleanor added, both the ones we're born into and the ones we choose. As we clinked glasses, I felt a profound sense of completion. This journey, which had begun as an act of defiance, a need to prove myself to Jennifer, had evolved into something far more meaningful, a reclaiming of my fullest self, a reconnection with my family on deeper terms, a reminder that life continues to offer new possibilities at every stage. The meal that followed was a symphony of flavors and textures, each course more exquisite than the last. But even more satisfying was the conversation that flowed around the table. Plans for future gatherings, shared memories of our European adventure, dreams and aspirations for the months and years ahead. So, what's next for you, Grandma? Ethan asked as dessert was served. After Barcelona, I mean. Are you going home with us? I exchanged glances with Eleanor, who nodded encouragingly. Actually, I said, we've decided to extend our trip a bit longer. We're taking a cruise from Barcelona to several Mediterranean ports, the French Riviera, the Italian coast, a few Greek islands. Jennifer looked surprised but not dismayed. That sounds amazing, Mom. How long will you be gone? 3 more weeks, I replied. We'll be back in Portland by early August. Good for you, Rob said with genuine approval. Why rush back when there's so much more to see? Exactly, I agreed. This trip has awakened something in me, a hunger for new experiences, new perspectives. I'm not ready to return to my quiet routine just yet. Sophia looked up from her dessert with sudden intensity. Will you take tons of pictures? And maybe we could video chat from some of the places you visit. Of course, I promised, touched by her interest. I'll share the journey with all of you. As we said our goodbyes later that evening, Jennifer's family would depart for Madrid in the morning, while Eleanor and I would board our cruise ship. There were tears mixed with the hugs and well wishes. But they were tears of gratitude and connection, not sadness or regret. Thank you for everything, Mom, Jennifer whispered as she embraced me one last time. This trip has changed us all for the better. It has, I agreed, holding her close. But remember, it's not just the trip itself. It's being open to transformation, to seeing each other and ourselves with fresh eyes. Standing at the railing of our cruise ship the next day, watching Barcelona's skyline recede into the distance, I felt a newfound peace settle over me. James's compass rested in my pocket, a tangible connection to the man who had shared my dreams for so many years. But his spirit was with me in a deeper way, in my courage to step beyond boundaries, in my willingness to embrace new experiences, in my capacity to love and be loved. "Ready for the next adventure?" Eleanor asked, joining me at the railing. I nodded, feeling the Mediterranean breeze against my face and the gentle motion of the ship beneath my feet. More than ready. As the coastline faded from view and the vast blue of the Mediterranean opened before us, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. Not just the physical travel from Portland to Rome to Paris to Barcelona, but the emotional distance I had traversed. From the woman who had been dismissed as too old and fragile for adventure to the confident traveler charting her own course through the world. The first-class ticket that had so shocked Jennifer had been more than just an upgrade in travel accommodations. It had been a declaration of independence, a statement of self-worth, a reclaiming of dreams too long deferred. And now, standing on the deck of a luxury cruise ship bound for new horizons, I understood that the most important journey had been the one within, the rediscovery of the vibrant, capable, adventurous woman I had always been. The Mediterranean stretched endlessly before us, a boundless canvas of possibility. And I was ready to fill it with new experiences, new memories, new dreams that were mine alone to pursue. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. Travel isn't just for the young. Sometimes, it means more when you've waited for it. His words stayed with me as I walked back to my car, a new lightness in my step. For the first time since James died, I felt like I was truly living again, rather than just existing. I had a purpose, a plan, and most importantly, I was taking back control of my narrative. I wasn't just Jennifer's elderly mother, or the widow Williams. I was Martha, embarking on the adventure of a lifetime. When I returned home, I called Eleanor again to share the details of our impending adventure. She was as excited as I was, already making lists of what to pack and suggesting books we should read before visiting each city. "What about Jennifer?" she asked eventually. "Are you going to tell her?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to keep it a secret, to simply disappear on my grand adventure without a word. But that wasn't who I was. "I'll tell her," I decided. "Not everything, not yet. But I'll let her know I'm taking a trip with you. She doesn't need to know the details until the right moment." Eleanor chuckled. "I'd pay good money to see her face when she realizes what you've done." "You won't have to," I replied with a smile of my own. "That's included in the price of admission." Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into preparations for the trip. I bought new luggage, sleek, lightweight suitcases that would be easy to maneuver. I refreshed my wardrobe with comfortable but stylish travel clothes. I even splurged on a new digital camera, determined to capture every moment of this belated dream. I continued my daily walks, gradually increasing my distance to build stamina for the European adventures ahead. I practiced basic phrases in Italian, French, and Spanish using language apps on my tablet. I read travel blogs and watched documentaries about our destinations. I was preparing thoroughly, not just to ensure I could keep up, as Jennifer had worried, but to fully immerse myself in the experience. During our Sunday calls, Jennifer chatted excitedly about their upcoming trip, oblivious to the fact that I was planning my own parallel journey. She shared details about the walking tours they'd booked, the restaurants they planned to visit, the shopping she hoped to do. I listened attentively, mentally noting the places they'd be and when, ensuring our paths wouldn't cross until I was ready. "And how are you doing, Mom?" she would eventually ask, almost as an afterthought. "Keeping busy?" "Oh, yes," I would reply truthfully. "I've been making plans with Eleanor. We're thinking of taking a little trip ourselves." "That's nice," Jennifer would say distractedly, before launching into more details about their European itinerary. She never asked where Eleanor and I were planning to go. She assumed, I suppose, that a little trip for two women of our age meant a weekend in a nearby coastal town, or perhaps a short cruise. The possibility that we might be planning something more ambitious never seemed to cross her mind. 2 weeks before our departure date, I invited Jennifer and her family to dinner at my condo. They made the drive down from Seattle on a Saturday, arriving in the late afternoon. Sophia and Ethan gave me perfunctory hugs before retreating to their devices in the living room. Rob was polite but distant, his mind clearly elsewhere. Only Jennifer made an effort to engage, helping me in the kitchen while chatting about work and the kids' activities. "The Europe trip is coming up fast," she mentioned as we prepared the salad. "Less than a month now. The kids are finally getting excited, though Sophia is more interested in the shopping than the history." "I'm sure they'll love it," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Actually, I have some news of my own. Eleanor and I have booked a trip." Jennifer looked up from the tomato she was slicing. "Oh? Where to?" I took a deep breath. This was the moment to begin unraveling my plan, to give her just enough information to plant the seed. "Europe, actually," I said casually, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "We've both always wanted to go, and Eleanor has been several times before, so she's a perfect travel companion." Jennifer's knife paused mid-slice. "Europe? Mom? Are you serious? When are you going?" "Our flight leaves the week after next," I replied, continuing to tear lettuce leaves as if discussing nothing more significant than a trip to the grocery store. First stop, Rome. I could see her mental calculations. That would put me in Europe at almost exactly the same time as their family trip. Her expression shifted from surprise to concern. "Mom, we just talked about this. International travel is really demanding. Are you sure this is a good idea?" I met her gaze steadily. "I'm sure. Eleanor and I have been planning carefully. We're both looking forward to it." Jennifer set down her knife, her brow furrowed. "But what about your health? The time change? The walking, the stress of navigating foreign countries?" "I've consulted with my doctor," I replied, which was true. He gave me a clean bill of health and some recommendations for traveling comfortably. I've been increasing my daily walks, and I've been practicing Italian. "Mi chiamo Martha," I added with a small smile. "This seems impulsive," Jennifer said, her voice taking on that patronizing tone that had become so familiar lately. "I'm worried you haven't thought this through." "I've been thinking about this trip for 40 years, Jennifer," I replied, unable to keep a hint of sharpness from my voice. "Your father and I planned it together. We saved for it together. I think I've had plenty of time to consider it." A flash of guilt crossed her face at the mention of James. "I know, Mom, but Dad would want you to be safe. This isn't like you. You've always been so practical." I turned back to the salad, adding cucumber slices with deliberate precision. "People change, dear. Sometimes life forces changes upon us, and sometimes we choose them for ourselves. I'm choosing this." Jennifer opened her mouth as if to argue further, then closed it again. After a moment, she said, "Well, I hope you and Eleanor have a wonderful time, but please be careful. And make sure your phone's international plan is activated so we can check in." "Of course," I assured her, deciding not to mention the first-class tickets or 5-star hotels just yet. That revelation could wait. The rest of the evening passed without further discussion of my travel plans. Jennifer seemed preoccupied, occasionally glancing at me with a mixture of concern and confusion, as if trying to reconcile the practical mother she thought she knew with this seemingly impulsive woman planning international adventures. As they prepared to leave, Jennifer hugged me tightly. "I love you, Mom," she whispered. Each phrase hit like a physical blow. "I see," was all I could manage to say, my voice suddenly small. "Don't be upset, Mom. We're just being practical. We want everyone to enjoy the trip, and we're worried you might struggle or feel left out. The kids will be wanting to go the whole time." I heard Rob's voice in the background, though I couldn't make out his words. Then Jennifer again. "Rob thinks maybe we could do a nice weekend trip with you later in the fall instead. Something closer to home. A consolation prize. That's what they were offering me. A weekend trip to some nearby destination as a substitute for the European dream I'd held for decades. And all because they had decided I was too old, too frail, too much of a burden to include in their real adventures. "That sounds lovely," I lied, summoning every ounce of dignity I could muster. "We can talk about it later. I should go now. My book club meeting is starting soon." It was Sunday evening. My book club met on Thursdays, but Jennifer didn't catch the discrepancy. Or if she did, she chose not to mention it. She seemed relieved to end the conversation. "Great. We'll send you lots of pictures, and maybe we can video call from some of the famous spots." "I'd like that," I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions I was feeling. "Have a wonderful evening, dear." After hanging up, I sat motionless, on my sofa, Whiskers eventually climbing into my lap as if sensing my distress. The silence of my condo pressed in around me. I felt hollow, diminished somehow. Not because I couldn't go to Europe, though that disappointment was real, but because my own daughter saw me as nothing more than an elderly burden, someone to be managed and appeased rather than included and valued. When had this happened? When had I transformed in her eyes from the woman who had taught her to ride a bike, helped her through college applications, and supported her through the early struggles of motherhood into some fragile creature to be sheltered and pitied? I'm not sure how long I sat there, stroking Whiskers absently while tears silently tracked down my cheeks. The sky outside my window darkened as evening settled over Portland. Eventually, I got up, wiped my face, and made a cup of tea. English breakfast, James's favorite. As I sipped it, standing by my kitchen window and looking out at the city lights, something shifted inside me. This wasn't the first time I'd faced disappointment or loss. I'd survived James's death, hadn't I? I'd rebuilt a life that, while different from what I'd planned, still had meaning and joy. I was still Martha Williams, still capable, still curious about the world, still very much alive. And suddenly, with perfect clarity, I knew what I needed to do. The next morning, I woke with the sun, my resolve only strengthened by a night's sleep. After my usual breakfast of toast and coffee, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Eleanor. "You won't believe what happened," I told her, recounting my conversation with Jennifer. Eleanor's indignation on my behalf was exactly what I needed. "That's ridiculous," she exclaimed. "You're in better shape than half the people at our book club, and most of them are younger than you. What is she thinking?" "That's what I'd like to know," I said, feeling validated by her reaction. "But I've made a decision, Ellie. I'm going to Europe." "With them?" she asked. "No," I replied, surprised by the firmness in my voice. "On my own." "Well, not entirely on my own. That's why I'm calling. How would you feel about joining me?" "Know you've been to Europe before, but—" "Yes," Eleanor interrupted, not even letting me finish. "Absolutely, yes. When are we leaving?" I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. "I haven't figured out all the details yet, but I'm thinking around the same time as Jennifer's family. Different cities, though." "Martha Williams," Eleanor said, a smile in her voice. "I think this might be the beginning of a beautiful adventure." My second call was to Global Journeys, a travel agency downtown that specialized in European travel. I made an appointment with an agent named Michael for that afternoon. Michael Thompson turned out to be a godsend. In his mid-50s with salt and pepper, hair and reading glasses perched on the end of his nose, he listened attentively as I explained what I wanted: first-class tickets to Europe, luxury accommodations, and a carefully planned itinerary that would put me in the same cities as Jennifer's family but at slightly different times. So you want to be in Rome when they arrive in Paris, and in Paris when they move on to Barcelona? He clarified, typing notes into his computer. Exactly, I confirmed, and I want to stay at the best hotels, the kind of places that make a statement. Michael raised an eyebrow but nodded appreciatively. I understand completely. And you mentioned your friend Eleanor will be joining you. Yes, she's traveled extensively and speaks some French and Italian. Between the two of us, I think we'll manage quite well. I have no doubt, he said, and I appreciated that there wasn't a hint of condescension in his tone. Now, let's talk about budget. First-class international travel and luxury accommodations aren't inexpensive. I took a deep breath. I know, but I have savings. Quite substantial savings, actually. James and I lived frugally our whole lives, planning for this very trip. And after he died, I paused, steadying myself. After he died, I received his life insurance. I've barely touched it. It was meant for our dreams, and this was our biggest one. Michael nodded, his expression softening with understanding. Then let's make it happen. A trip worthy of both. Of you. Over the next 2 hours, we crafted an itinerary that made my heart race with anticipation. First-class flights, 5-star hotels with views of the Colosseum, the Eiffel Tower, and the Mediterranean. Private guided tours of the Vatican museums, the Louvre, and Parc Güell. Dinner reservations at Michelin-starred restaurants. It was extravagant, perhaps even a little excessive, but it felt right. This wasn't just a vacation, it was a statement. A reclamation of my dreams and my dignity. When Michael showed me the final cost, I didn't flinch. It was a significant portion of my savings. But what was I saving for, if not this? I handed over my credit card with a sense of liberation. Your confirmation documents will be ready for pickup tomorrow, Michael said as we concluded our meeting. And I've arranged for a car service to take you to the airport. First class begins before you even board the plane. I thanked him warmly, gathering my purse and the preliminary itinerary he'd printed for me. As I stood to leave, he added, Mrs. Williams, if you don't mind me saying so, I think what you're doing is wonderful. There's a special kind of pain that comes from being dismissed by your own child. That moment when you realize they no longer see you as capable, but as a burden. Someone to be managed rather than respected. I never expected to feel that sting. From my Jennifer. But life has a way of surprising us, doesn't it? When she told me I was too old to join their family vacation to Europe, something inside me broke. And then something stronger was born. This is the story of how I reclaimed not just my dignity, but my dreams. And trust me, the look on her face when she saw my first-class ticket was worth every penny. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I've always believed that age is just a number. At 68, I certainly don't feel old, despite what my mirror might suggest with its silver-haired reflection. My name is Martha Williams, and until 3 years ago, I was living what most would call a normal life. I taught English at Portland High for over 30 years, raised my daughter Jennifer, and built a beautiful marriage with my husband James. We had plans, so many plans for our retirement years together. Europe was at the top of our list. James had mapped out this grand tour, Rome for the history, Paris for the romance, and Barcelona for the architecture. He was meticulous that way, always researching, always planning. But life doesn't care about our plans, does it? James passed away suddenly from a heart attack one crisp autumn morning. One minute we were discussing whether to have pancakes or waffles for breakfast, and the next, he was gone. Just like that. 3 years have passed, but sometimes it still feels like yesterday. I've managed to build a new routine in my modest condo in Portland. I keep busy with my book club, volunteer at the local library, and occasionally meet with former colleagues for coffee. It's not the life I had envisioned, but it's mine, and I've grown to appreciate its quiet simplicity. I have Whiskers, my tabby cat, who seems to know exactly when I need company, and a small circle of friends who check in regularly. Jennifer moved to Seattle about 5 years ago when her husband Rob got a promotion at his tech company. They live in one of those modern homes with floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist furniture that looks beautiful in magazines, but seems uncomfortable to actually use. My grandchildren, Sophia and Ethan, are growing up faster than I can keep track of, 14 and 12 now, constantly attached to their devices but still sweet kids underneath it all. We've always maintained a good relationship, or so I thought. Jennifer calls every Sunday evening like clockwork, and I drive up to Seattle for the major holidays. The distance, both physical and emotional, has gradually increased over the years, but I chalked it up to her busy life with the kids and Rob's demanding career. I never expected what happened last month to shatter the comfortable illusion I had been living in. It was during one of our Sunday calls when Jennifer mentioned their summer plans. "We're finally doing it, Mom," she said, excitement bubbling in her voice. "We've booked that European vacation we've been talking about for years. 3 weeks through Italy, France, and Spain. The kids are at the perfect age to appreciate it now." My heart skipped a beat. Europe. James and I had dreamed of those same destinations for decades. We'd collected guidebooks, watched travel documentaries, even started learning basic Italian phrases together. And now Jennifer was going to experience it all with her family. "That sounds wonderful, honey," I said, genuinely happy for them while feeling a familiar pang of loss. Then, almost without thinking, the words tumbled out. "You know, your father and I always wanted to see Europe together." There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear Jennifer's mind working. "Mom," she began, her tone shifting to that careful, measured voice people use when they're about to say something uncomfortable. "Why don't you join us for part of the trip? Maybe the Rome portion? That was Dad's favorite in all those travel books, wasn't it?" I felt a surge of emotion. Surprise, joy, a touch of anxiety. "Do you mean it? I wouldn't want to impose on your family time." "Let me talk to Rob," she said. "I think it could work. The kids would love having you there to share it with." For the first time in years, I felt a spark ignite inside me. Europe. The dream that James and I had carefully tended for decades might actually come true. Not in the way we had planned, but perhaps this was even better. Sharing it with the next generation, seeing those ancient wonders through my grandchildren's eyes. Over the next week, I found myself rejuvenated. I dug out James's old travel books from the storage closet, flipped through the dog-eared pages of his favorite Italy guide. I even downloaded a language app and started practicing basic Italian. Phrases again. "Buongiorno," I would say to Whiskers in the morning, who seemed thoroughly unimpressed with my pronunciation. I called my friend Eleanor, who traveled frequently since her retirement from nursing, to get her advice on comfortable walking shoes and the best travel adapters. I made an appointment with my doctor to get any necessary vaccinations and travel medications. I was being practical, but I was also allowing myself to dream again. The following Sunday, I waited eagerly for Jennifer's call. When my phone finally rang, I answered immediately. "So, what's the verdict?" I asked, unable to contain my excitement. There was a pause that lasted a beat too long. "Mom," Jennifer started, her voice carrying that same careful tone from before, but now with a hint of awkwardness. "Rob and I have been talking about the logistics, and we're thinking maybe this isn't the best time for you to join us." I felt my stomach drop. Oh? It's just that we'll be moving around a lot, you know? Different hotels every few days, lots of walking tours, busy schedules. It's going to be pretty fast-paced. I understand, I said, though I didn't really. I'm in good shape, Jen. I walk 3 miles most mornings. Another pause. It's not just that, Mom. Her voice lowered as if she was trying to soften the blow of what came next. We're worried about you keeping up. The cobblestone streets, the heat, the long museum tours. And what if something happened? You'd be far from your doctors, from your normal routine. I gripped the phone tighter. Something like what, Jennifer? You know what I mean, Mom. At your age, travel can be risky, especially international travel. We just don't think it's appropriate. Maybe we can look into one of those senior tour groups for you sometime. They're designed for older travelers, with a slower pace and medical staff. At your age, senior tour groups, slower pace. I just want you to be safe and happy. I love you too, I replied sincerely, and I am happy. Happier than I've been in a long time, actually. She pulled back, studying my face. There's something different about you lately. I can't quite put my finger on it. I smiled. I'll take that as a compliment. After they left, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, watching the city lights twinkle below. Jennifer's reaction had been predictable. Concern masked as care, doubt disguised as protectiveness. But I'd seen something else too, a flicker of something that might have been respect, or perhaps simply surprise that her predictable mother still had the capacity to astonish her. It was a start. But the real revelation was still to come. The days leading up to our departure flew by in a flurry of last-minute preparations. Eleanor and I met several times to coordinate our packing and review our itinerary. Michael from Global Journeys called to confirm all our arrangements and provide updates on our private tours and dinner reservations. Everything is set, Mrs. Williams, he assured me. You and Mrs. Garcia are going to have an absolutely unforgettable experience. I found myself growing more excited and less nervous as our departure date approached. There was a sense of rightness about this journey, as if James was somehow approving from wherever he was now. The evening before we left, I took out the antique compass he had given me on our 25th anniversary. To help you find your way, he had said, though I hope it always leads back to me. I packed it carefully in my carry-on bag, along with his favorite photo of us taken on our honeymoon. He would be with me on this journey, if not in person, then in spirit. The morning of our departure arrived with perfect early summer weather, clear skies and a gentle breeze. The car service Michael had arranged arrived precisely on time, a sleek black sedan with a uniformed driver who handled my luggage with care. Eleanor was already settled in the back seat, her face alight with anticipation. "Ready for our great adventure?" she asked as I slid in beside her. "More than ready," I replied, feeling a surge of exhilaration. I've been ready for 40 years. As we pulled away from my condo building, I looked back briefly, not with trepidation, but with a sense of leaving something behind. Not just my home, but the version of myself that had been gradually diminished by others' perceptions. The woman returning weeks from now would be different, transformed by experiences long dreamed of, but never realized until now. "Europe, here we come," Eleanor said, squeezing my hand. "They won't know what hit them." I laughed, feeling younger than I had in years. "No," I agreed, thinking not of Europe but of Jennifer and her family, who were scheduled to depart just 2 days after us. They certainly won't. The Portland International Airport buzzed with early morning activity as Eleanor and I made our way to the first-class check-in counter. I'd flown before, of course, but always economy class. James and I had always been practical with our money, saving for retirement, for emergencies, for someday. But someday had never come for us, And now, I was done waiting. The first class experience began immediately. A cheerful attendant whisked away our luggage while another escorted us to a private lounge where we were offered champagne and breakfast canapes. "Is this real?" Eleanor whispered, wide-eyed as she sank into a plush armchair. "I feel like I'm in a movie." "It's real," I assured her, accepting a flute of champagne from a passing server. At barely 7 in the morning, it felt deliciously rebellious. And this is just the beginning. I thought about Jennifer, who would be taking this same journey in cramped economy seats with her family in just 2 days. I wondered what she would say if she could see me now, sipping champagne in the first-class lounge instead of sitting nervously at the gate, clutching my boarding pass as she probably imagined I would be. When it was time to board, we were among the first called. The flight attendant who greeted us at the door of the plane seemed genuinely pleased to see us. "Mrs. Williams and Mrs. Garcia, welcome aboard. Let me show you to your seats." Our first-class pods were like nothing I'd ever experienced. Spacious, private, with seats that reclined fully into beds and personal entertainment systems larger than my television at home. A flight attendant appeared with more champagne and hot towels scented with lavender. "This is how the other half lives," Eleanor murmured, running her fingers over the soft leather armrest. "This is how we live now," I corrected her with a smile. "At least for the next 3 weeks." As the plane taxied down the runway, I felt a momentary pang of something. Not quite regret, not quite fear, but a whisper of doubt. Was I being petty? Was this elaborate plan merely an expensive act of rebellion against my daughter's dismissal? But as the aircraft gained speed and lifted into the air, the doubt dissolved. This wasn't about Jennifer. Not really. It was about me, about reclaiming the dream that James and I had shared for so long, about proving to myself that life didn't end at widowhood or at some arbitrary age where others decided I was too old for adventure. I closed my eyes as Portland fell away beneath us, silently promising James that I would see enough, feel enough, live enough for both of us. The flight to Rome with a brief layover in New York was long but luxurious in a way I'd never experienced before. We slept in our fully reclined seats beneath soft duvets, dined on meals that barely resembled airplane food, and were treated with a deference that was both foreign and intoxicating. By the time we began our descent into Rome's Fiumicino airport, I felt rested and eager rather than exhausted. "Look," Eleanor whispered, pointing out the window as the eternal city came into view. The morning sun gilded ancient domes and monuments, making them glow against the urban sprawl that surrounded them. "We're really here, Martha." I felt a lump form in my throat. "James would have loved this," I said softly. Eleanor squeezed my hand. "He's seeing it through your eyes." The VIP treatment continued after landing. We were met at the gate by a representative from our hotel who escorted us through a private customs checkpoint, retrieved our luggage, and ushered us into a waiting Mercedes. "Welcome to Rome, signore," our driver said as we settled into the leather back seat. "Your first time in Italia?" "Yes," I replied, trying out one of the phrases I'd practiced. "È un sogno che si avvera." It's a dream come true. He beamed at my attempt at his language. "Molto bene. You will love Roma. It is a city for the soul." As we drove from the airport into the heart of the city, I was mesmerized by the seamless blend of ancient and modern, sleek office buildings alongside ruins that had stood for millennia, stylish Italians on motor scooters zipping past monuments I'd only seen in books and films. It was overwhelming and exhilarating all at once. Our hotel, the Grand Plaza Roma, was a restored 17th century palazzo just steps from the Pantheon. As our car pulled up to the entrance, livered doormen rushed forward to greet us. The hotel manager himself welcomed us by name in the marble-clad lobby, offering espresso and pastries while our luggage was taken to our suite. "We have given you one of our finest accommodations," he told us with pride. a terrace suite with views of the ancient city. You have chosen a perfect time to visit, before the worst of the summer crowds and heat. Our suite was more opulent than I had imagined. 2 bedrooms connected to a luxurious living area, marble bathrooms with soaking tubs, and as promised, a private terrace that offered a panoramic view of terracotta rooftops, church domes, and in the distance, the unmistakable silhouette of the Colosseum. "I may never leave this room," Eleanor declared, falling onto one of the plush sofas. "This is paradise." "We didn't come all this way to stay in our room," I reminded her, though I was equally enchanted by our surroundings. "We have a private tour of the Vatican museums in 2 hours." Eleanor groaned theatrically but sat up. "You're right. James wouldn't want you to miss a thing. Let's get unpacked and freshen up. I think I forgot that you had a whole life before you were my mom, that you were once young and adventurous and had dreams of your own." "I still have dreams," I told her with a gentle smile, "and I'm not as old as you think." A hint of a smile tugged at her lips. "Clearly not." She gestured around the luxurious suite. "Anyone who can navigate international first-class travel and book private tours in multiple languages is doing just fine." "Speaking of which," I said, checking my watch, "we should head out soon if we're going to make our boat tour. The guide is meeting us at the dock at 11. As we gathered the others and prepared to leave, I felt a subtle shift in the family dynamic. Jennifer was watching me with new eyes, really seeing me perhaps for the first time in years. Rob seemed to have relaxed his protective hovering. Even the children were treating me with a newfound respect, as if their grandmother had suddenly become someone interesting, someone worth paying attention to. The boat tour was a delight. Our guide, Antoine, was a native Parisian with an encyclopedic knowledge of the city's history and architecture. As we glided along the Seine, passing beneath historic bridges and alongside iconic monuments, he regaled us with stories and anecdotes that brought Paris to life in a way no guidebook could. I watched Jennifer and her family gradually unwind, surrendering to the pleasure of the moment. For perhaps the first time on their trip, they weren't rushing from one attraction to another, checking items off a list. They were simply experiencing Paris, absorbing its beauty and history at a leisurely pace. When we passed beneath the Pont Neuf, Antoine explained that it was traditional to kiss your beloved while crossing under Paris's oldest bridge. "For good luck and eternal love," he said with a wink. Rob immediately pulled Jennifer close for a D. A kiss, and she laughed, a genuine, carefree sound I hadn't heard from her in ages. The children groaned theatrically, but their disgust was performative, masking the pleasure of seeing their parents happy. I felt a pang, thinking of James and the kisses we would have shared on this journey. As if reading my mind, Eleanor squeezed my hand. "He's here," she murmured. "In every beautiful thing you see, in every moment you savor. He's experiencing it all through you." I nodded, blinking back tears, not of grief this time, but of gratitude. Gratitude for this journey, for Eleanor's friendship, for the unexpected reconciliation with my daughter, and yes, for James, for the life we'd shared and the dreams we'd nurtured together, dreams I was finally fulfilling. As the boat tour concluded and we disembarked, Jennifer approached me while the others were distracted by a street performer near the dock. "Mom," she began hesitantly, "I've been thinking, would you consider joining us for the Barcelona portion of our trip? We leave Paris in 3 days, and it would mean a lot to have you with us. Not because you need us," she added quickly, "but because we'd enjoy your company. You clearly know how to travel in style." I smiled, touched by the genuine warmth in her invitation. "That's a lovely offer, Jennifer. Let me talk with Eleanor and check our plans. Barcelona is our next destination too, as it happens." "Of course it is," she said with a rueful laugh. "You're always one step ahead of us, aren't you?" "Not ahead," I corrected gently, "just on my own path." As we rejoined the others and began walking toward a cafe Antoine had recommended for lunch, I felt a profound sense of contentment. This journey had already given me so much more than I'd anticipated. Not just the pleasure of experiencing these beautiful cities, but the deep satisfaction of reclaiming my identity, of being seen and respected for who I truly was. And we still had Barcelona to look forward to. The adventure was far from over. After our impromptu family boat tour, we all strolled to the cafe Antoine had recommended, a charming establishment tucked away on a side street near the Seine. The afternoon sun bathed Paris in a golden light, lending an almost dreamlike quality to the already picturesque scene. As we settled at a table on the outdoor terrace, I noticed how the dynamic between us had shifted. Jennifer was more relaxed, less guarded in her interactions with me. The children, picking up on this change, seemed more comfortable as well. "So, what's next on your grand European tour, Grandma?" Sophia asked, genuinely interested rather than merely polite. "After Barcelona, I mean." I exchanged glances with Eleanor. "We haven't decided yet. We originally planned for just Rome, Paris, and Barcelona, your grandfather's dream itinerary. But now that we're here, it seems a shame to rush home." "You could come with us for the rest of our trip," Ethan suggested with the straightforward simplicity of a 12-year-old. "We're going to Barcelona and then taking a train to Madrid before flying home." Jennifer started to speak, perhaps to temper his enthusiasm, but Rob interjected first. "That's actually not a bad idea. Mrs. Williams, Eleanor, you'd be welcome to join us if your schedules allow." I was touched by the sincerity of his offer. Rob had always been somewhat distant, more focused on his career than family relationships, but there was genuine warmth in his invitation. "That's very kind," I said. "Let me discuss it with Eleanor. Barcelona was meant to be our final destination, but plans can change." Eleanor nodded, following my lead. "We're keeping our options open. That's the beauty of retirement. No deadlines, no rush to get back to work." Lunch was a leisurely affair, the conversation flowing more naturally than it had in years. We shared stories of our respective Roman adventures, their struggles with crowded public transportation contrasted with our private guides, their rushed visits to major attractions versus our unhurried exploration. But there was no judgment. In the comparison, just a recognition of different travel styles. "Next time we're doing it your way, Mom," Jennifer said with a rueful smile. "I feel like we've been running a marathon ever since we landed in Europe." "There's something to be said for slowing down," I agreed. "Experiencing fewer sights more deeply, rather than checking everything off a list." Rob nodded thoughtfully. "We did fall into the trap of trying to see everything. It's exhausting, especially with kids." "Hey," Sophia protested. "We're not the ones who made this crazy schedule. You guys are the ones who keep saying we need to get our money's worth." Jennifer had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "She's not wrong. We've been cramming our days full because this trip was so expensive. Every minute we're not seeing something famous feels like wasted money." "The most memorable moments often aren't the famous attractions," Eleanor observed. "Sometimes it's just sitting in a cafe like this, watching the world go by, or getting lost on a side street and discovering a tiny, perfect patisserie." As if to illustrate her point, our waiter arrived with a tray of exquisite desserts. Delicate pastries filled with fresh berries, rich chocolate mousse topped with gold leaf, and creme brulee with perfectly caramelized sugar. We indulged in shared bites and appreciative murmurs, the simple pleasure of the moment binding us together more effectively than any rushed visit to a landmark. After lunch, we decided to continue our day together. The children wanted to visit the Eiffel Tower, and since Eleanor and I had only seen it from a distance, we agreed it would be a perfect afternoon activity. Rather than taking the metro, we summoned our hired car, which arrived within minutes. "Wow," Ethan whispered as we settled into the luxury sedan. "This is way better than squishing into the subway." I caught Jennifer's eye and saw a mixture of emotions there. Perhaps a touch of envy, but also a dawning appreciation for how I had chosen to travel. For the first time, she seemed to truly understand that this wasn't about extravagance for its own sake. It was about honoring the dream James and I had shared, about experiencing this long-anticipated journey in comfort and style. At the Eiffel Tower, our driver arranged for priority access tickets, allowing us to bypass the worst of the lines. As we ascended in the elevator, Sophia and Ethan pressed against the glass, their excitement palpable. I found myself watching their reactions, more than the view itself, treasuring the wonder in their expressions. "It's crazy to think this was once considered an eyesore," Rob remarked as we stepped onto the observation deck. When it was built for the 1889 World's Fair, Parisians hated it. Now it's the symbol of the city. "Sometimes it takes time to appreciate the true value of things," I said, the parallel to my own situation not lost on me. "Or people,"